Yeah, I read this thing about the compute Google used once, compared to the amount of carbon that people used to spend driving in their cars places to get information. And you have people saying Google's so horrible, we should shut it down. It's like spending all this energy. And it was intellectually a very dishonest thing to say, because it was a net savings in energy. For like AI, yeah, it's gonna need a lot of energy. We're gonna keep figuring out way more efficient algorithms, way more efficient chips. We're gonna get fusion. We're gonna power the stuff this way. So I think it is like important to address this issue, but we will in all of these fantastic ways. But I think this points to something else, which is you opened asking about P-Doom. And the level of doomerism in society right now, I think the way we are teaching our young people that the world is totally screwed, that it's hopeless to try to solve problems, that all we can do is like sit in our bedrooms in the dark and think about how awful we are, is a really deeply unproductive streak. And I hope MIT is different than a lot of other college campuses. I assume it is, but you all need to make it part of your life mission to fight against this. Prosperity, abundance, a better life next year, a better life for our children. That is the only path forward. That is the only way to have a functioning society. And there will always be people who want to sit around and say, we shouldn't do AI because we may burn a little more carbon, or we shouldn't do AI because we haven't fully addressed bias. And it turns out a couple years later, we made a lot of progress on both of those things. And the anti-progress streak, the people deserve a great life streak, who are usually the people that have quite a lot of privilege in the first place, is something I hope you all fight against.
Yeah.
There's been a ton of activity in the AI space. One of the big things to drop is that Microsoft rolls out its very own AI model to compete with OpenAI, Google, and the rest. The new model, internally referred to as May-1, that's MAI-1, is being overseen by Mustafa Suleyman, the ex-Google AI leader, who recently took over as the CEO of Microsoft AI. I'm going to call it Mai-1. I'm not sure it's May-1, Mai-1, whatever. Mai-1 will be far larger than any of these smaller open source models that Microsoft has previously trained. It's important to note that Microsoft created some very effective small models. So even though Mai-1 will have roughly 500 billion parameters, that is much smaller than something like GPT-4 that has more than 1 trillion parameters. This certainly does not mean that it will be bad. Meta's Llama 3, of course, the currently biggest released model, is 70 billion parameters, and that is on par with GPT-4. So Microsoft's new model could very well far exceed GPT-4, potentially. We still don't know yet, but it would not be out of the realm of possibility. They've been publishing a lot of research on how to create new models by taking the outputs of other models. So taking synthetic data produced by other AI models and creating smaller but very efficient models trained on synthetic data. Orca 2, for example, is a great example of that. So Microsoft is pursuing a dual trajectory of sorts in AI, aiming to develop both small language models that are inexpensive to build into apps and that could run on mobile devices, as well as the larger state-of-the-art AI models. And then it looks like they're willing to chart a new path that's separate from OpenAI. Up to this point, we can assume that OpenAI and Microsoft would be kind of tied together, their fates interlinked, but this is implying that Microsoft just does not need OpenAI. And we could potentially see this new massive model at the Build Developer Conference later this month. Now, if you saw my previous video, we were all expecting that OpenAI would have a new announcement coming up sometime next week or this week about something new that was dropping, potentially a search product, something that would compete directly with Google as well as Perplexity AI. But right now, it does seem like they're considering postponing that announcement. We're not too sure why. Now, recently, Sam Altman has been visiting multiple universities and other places to talk about AI and the future in general. He visited Stanford, MIT, etc. And it looks like some people don't like this idea of a brighter, better future driven by technology. Sam posted this: using technology to create abundance, intelligence, energy, longevity, whatever, will not solve all problems that will not magically make everyone happy. But it is an unequivocally great thing to do and expands our option space. To me, it feels like a moral imperative, which one thing I like about Sam is he's not afraid to say things that some people might not like to hear. Prosperity is a good thing, actually. D growth. And then he says, I'm a good GPT-2 chatbot. And it looks like OpenAI just released 2 new models in the LLM system arena last night. We have I'm a good GPT-2 chatbot, and I am also a good GPT-2 chatbot. The new one, the also a good GPT-2, seems to be stronger in reasoning and is even more capable than the previous GPT-2 chatbot released last week. Also looks like OpenAI changed the domain of ChatGPT from chat.openai to just ChatGPT. And just keep in mind, as I'm going through this, this is all in the span of just a few days. This is all like about 48 hours worth of news. So there's this flurry of activity on the OpenAI front. So we're not quite sure what's happening. Are they preparing for this massive rollout? Are they delaying it? Sam Altman's making the tour across the country, talking to people. I mean, something's bubbling up. Something's happening. We're not quite sure what, but yet another announcement is OpenAI has an API partnership with Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is the world's leading knowledge platform for highly technical content, and they're partnering with the large language models for AI development. So what exactly is happening? Well, OpenAI will utilize Stack Overflow's Overflow API product and collaborate with Stack Overflow to improve model performance for developers who use their products. And Stack Overflow gets to use OpenAI models as part of their development of Overflow AI, which of course sounds like a win-win for both, but some people are suggesting that OpenAI might be getting the better deal here because once they have all the data and models that are trained on all of this data, as you can imagine, AI model that can code very well would be very disruptive to something like Stack Overflow. OpenAI also posts this, our approach to data and AI, and they're launching this interesting thing they're calling a media manager for creators and content owners. And the goal here is to respect the choices of creators and content owners on AI. Of course, a lot of people have complained that OpenAI trains on everyone's data. Things like Midjourney, the works of artists to then replicate the art. At least that's their stance. They're saying that goes against copyrights. And they're talking here about something similar to the robots.txt, which the internet ecosystem sort of adopted for web publishers, right? So if you have a website, generally you're going to have a robots.txt file. And there you kind of say, do you want crawlbots like Google Crawlbot crawling your site and indexing it to use in the search engines, or do you want to just opt out? Now, of course, if you're running something online, if you're a publication, if you're a news site, of course you want to opt in. You want the traffic from Google. So most people decide to opt in. And here the same idea is for OpenAI to enable publishers to express their preferences about the use of their content in AI. Do you want to use your content to train this AI? What's interesting to me here is once they have something like this and they have people opting in, like let's say the New York Times, who is suing OpenAI for copyright infringement, let's say they opt in or rather opt out of having their data used, OpenAI could use that to just make sure that ChatGPT doesn't output anything that resembles that data. So if it starts producing a paragraph that's very, very similar, those outputs could be blocked, which certainly would reduce the liability for OpenAI. They are also introducing a new classifier to help researchers identify content created by DALL-E 3 and joining the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. So again, a lot of this is seemingly in response to a lot of the criticisms that they've had for using content or creating things where we don't know what's real or what's not. And this is their answer to various cybersecurity concerns. And this is a beefy blog post that goes pretty deep into how certify various portions of the infrastructure for security, including GPUs, making sure they're authentic, testing them for integrity, testing networks, data centers, using AI for cyber defense, as well as AI-specific audit and compliance program. And they're building and investing to achieve these goals and hiring people to work towards those ends. They have a grant program as well as hiring people for certain roles in that field. A few weeks ago, we covered a presentation by one of the CIA ex-directors, I believe, saying that AI has really increased the liability for cyber attacks, the various vulnerabilities that we might have for cyber attacks, not just because the ability to conduct those cyber attacks is growing with the help of AI, but also, and this is an interesting thing to think about that's not very obvious, but back in the day, you might have a bunch of random data out there on the internet without having to worry too much about it. But now with AI, a lot of fairly harmless things that we would put out there in the past has become a lot more dangerous. We covered this post by Andrew Gao, who used GEOSPY, this brand new tool using AI that's able to determine where in the world you are just by looking at a picture. It's able to guess that this is Slovenia and the specific church that you're looking at. This it guessed as being next to Mountain View Campground, and it's correct to within 15 miles. Notice there's no landmarks or anything to really identify this. There's no text, no road signs, not too much information here. It gets this location in Germany within 40 miles. A picture in Germany. So it was 4 hours off, but still, if you look at the picture, there just isn't that much to go on here. It's just a field of grass. I figured out this was Singapore, etc., and many, many more. But as we put more and more information online, that information can be aggregated, fed into neural networks, into AI, and potentially it would be able to come up with certain insights that could be used to conduct maybe attacks or scams or whatever other nefarious activity that even 5 years ago, we didn't think about it because it was impossible. Meanwhile, it looks like we have some more leaks about Apple AI and what Apple is planning to do with AI in the future. What kind of upgrades are heading to the iOS 18, and key features include AI-powered text summarization across Safari and Siri, smarter search results, etc. So the big thing here is that a lot of this will be on device, right? So Ajax will be able to generate responses to some prompts entirely on Apple devices without sending anything to the cloud. We've covered a few research papers posted by Apple. They're really going hard after on-device agents. They're building these tiny nano models, these very small AI models that are some fraction of 1% of what GPT-4 is, for example, that are able to interact with the screen, that are able to understand the context. If you say, select the second website on the screen, it'll be able to kind of figure out based on the location on the screen what you're referring to. So kind of that context of what you're talking about. And everything, because it's so tiny, will be able to run quickly and on device. And then there's this little email that we have access to called Thoughts on OpenAI. So this is from Kevin Scott. This is Kevin Scott. You probably have seen his face before. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft. And he's writing to Satya Nadella, the CEO, and Bill Gates, the Bill Gates. I don't think he even needs a title. He's just Bill Gates. And he's saying the thing that's interesting about what OpenAI and DeepMind and Google Brain are doing is the scale of their ambition and how that ambition is driving everything from data center design to computer silicon to networks and distributed system architectures and all this other stuff. But he's saying that in the beginning, it seemed like all these people were just trying to play this game to see which reinforcement learning system could achieve the most impressive game-playing stunt. He kind of dismissed all those efforts. And now he's saying, well, that was a mistake. When they took all of that infrastructure to build NLP models that we couldn't easily replicate. So he was dismissing their little games, but then they built something that made him realize that we're falling behind. We can't replicate what they're doing. Then he started to take things more seriously. And as I dug in to try to understand where all of the capability gaps were between Google and us for model training, I got very, very worried. Dun, dun, dun. Turns out just replicating BERT large wasn't easy to do for us. So this is one of the earlier Google models. Even though we had the template for the model, it took us around 6 months to get the model trained because our infrastructure wasn't up to the task. They were many years behind the competition in terms of machine learning scale. Satya comes back and says, a very good email that explains why I want us to do this and also why we will then ensure our infra folks execute. Very interesting style of writing. It's very compressed. So this document is from US v. Google in 2024. And so here's Kevin Scott, the person that wrote that original email, responding. I think he's responding in part to those emails and the news stories about this. He's saying, I'm not sure why this is news, but just to summarize the obvious, we build big supercomputers to train AI models. Our partner OpenAI uses these supercomputers to train frontier-defining models. And then we both make these models available in products and services so that lots of people can benefit from them. We rather like this arrangement, smiley face. We've been at it for almost 5 years now. Each supercomputer we build for OpenAI is a lot bigger than the one that preceded it, and each frontier model they train is a lot more powerful than its predecessors. We will continue to be on this path, building increasingly powerful supercomputer for OpenAI to train the models that will set pace for the whole field well into the future. There's no end in sight to the increasing impact that our work together will have. And he's saying they'll be building their own models and adding them into products, and there will be more of this going on in the future too. Some of these models have names like Turing and Mai. Some, like Phi, for example, we even open source. So that letter, Thoughts on OpenAI, was sent just weeks before Microsoft announced its $1 billion investment in OpenAI. And now, about 5 years later, Microsoft is building its own large language model, which, assuming it's more efficient than GPT-4, which a lot of these new models are, they're very effective even though they have less parameters, we could potentially see Microsoft supersede OpenAI and Google and Meta. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but out of those other AI companies, OpenAI, Meta, Google, Microsoft seems like it has the most straightforward path to making money with these AI models. Google's search engine, we're still not sure how that cash cow for Google, how it's going to intersect with AI. Is AI going to diminish how much search we do? It certainly seems like that could be the case. Meta initially started using AI just for their internal purposes, for WhatsApp and Facebook and Insta, just to improve functionality. They're not necessarily selling those services. Microsoft, with all of their products, with Azure, seem to be like the most straightforward revenue generating company when it comes to having their own AI model. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Am I missing something? It's interesting to see kind of the arc of Bill Gates, who rode the personal computer wave, kind of missed out a little bit on some of the internet revolution. Certainly other businesses took much more advantage of that. Maybe missed out a little bit on the mobile revolution, right? The top phones are Android and Apple. Microsoft phones, maybe not so much. And looks like they were really falling behind in AI too, until 5 years ago. Kevin, Satya, and Bill all got on the horn and said, hey, let's throw a few billion at this Sam Altman character. And yeah, let's see how well that bet will be paying off. I feel like that may be the highest ROI investment Microsoft has ever had. And if you've made it this far, then you might be interested in this. And yes, this is a product pitch, so feel free to tune out. But if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I am really interested in building these AI agents, in building automation, in learning how to wield various AI tools and AI capabilities to improve my productivity, to improve my ability to have impact. I mentioned before that I've been in e-commerce for the last 10 plus years, so certainly using AI to help me run various e-com businesses and help other people in that field, I'm very interested in that, as well as productivity, as well as things like this channel where I talk about AI and try to teach AI and how to use it. So this forum is just a few days old and we're already approaching 1,000 members. Hopefully we'll cross into 1,000 in the next couple of days. And the overall sense that I'm getting from people in the forum is that most of us see that there's big things coming and we don't want to miss it. We want to be on the bleeding edge of AI. We don't want to look back on this, in 5 to 10 years and go, whoops, we missed it. Certainly, I know if I did that, I would feel pretty foolish. I'm very fortunate that this channel is watched by and listened to by many incredible, smart, very high-level people. And for a long time, people in the comments have been asking me to organize something like this so that we can all get together and discuss and form ideas and network and think over this stuff together. A mastermind group, if you will. And I've attempted a few things and I've kind of took my time with some of this stuff, unfortunately, but no more. Here it is. It's live. It's working. The discussions are popping off. I'm rapidly releasing tutorials on how to build AI agents, on how to use the various AI tools that I've learned and hopefully mastered. And that might be a good jumping off point for people that are just getting into the space. But my real big goal is to have the community be the really valuable and rare resource. The goal is to make this the biggest and most valuable private community online. The reason it's private is because My first attempt at creating this was creating an open forum. And there's a lot of problems with that. Spam, bots, it's really hard to moderate. And you have a lot of people that are necessarily all focused on the same goal. The goal of this community is to learn, to level up, to grow. I think that's why this thing that Sam said resonates with me so much. To grow, to create abundance is unequivocally a great thing to do. And he says that to him, it feels like a moral imperative. And to me, it does too. So if you want to join in, if you think that this is something that would be useful to you, number one, and number two, that you can hopefully provide some value back to the world or to the community based on the things that you learn, the things that you know, then I will ask you to join me. Help me. Let's build this thing together. With that said, my name is Wes Roth, and thank you for watching.